So growing up in the city of Pittsburgh meant that I was pretty insulated. What it meant ultimately and more was that I didn't really need to worry about anti-Semitism. I grew up really in this wonderful close-knit community. I grew up in Mr. Rogers' neighborhood. I even got to see and get onto his set when I was a little girl. It was pretty cool, let me tell you. In 2018, when the massacre occurred at the Tree of Life Synagogue, personally, I was devastated. This is a congregation that I have gone to bar bat mitzvahs in. It was not my home congregation, but the community was big enough that there were many, many congregations, and small enough that it was a cheers moment. We all knew your name, or at least what you kind of looked like. And that was a huge wake-up call for me. As if Charlottesville wasn't enough to have white supremacists chanting, "Jew will not replace us," a neo-Nazi or Nazi epithet, we have seen, unfortunately, in this country, ever since that moment, growing anti-Semitism. This is not the happy, fun sermon I was looking forward to delivering for our first time in the sanctuary this evening. This is a realistic thought that I personally have, super short as it is, about what's going on. When we look today in Texas, we will, if you're unfamiliar, I'm not surprised that 4 days ago, one of our Reformed sister synagogues, an attempted arson occurred, causing over $25,000 worth of damage. In the same city of Austin, Texas, there have been many more incidents of anti-Semitism, all of which should tell us, pay attention. From the freeways, anti-Semitic signs hung stating, "Vax the Jews." And while we are insulated in Middle Georgia, and Betty can tell you that she and I met with Rabbi Rubenstein and the sheriff earlier this summer, simply discussing the fact that in this country, in 2021, there's growing anti-Semitism, tells me we too need to wake up. We need to get out of the thought that we're still living in Mr. Rogers' neighborhood. In this regard, I might be speaking a little bit to myself, and accept that our neighbors aren't quite so friendly as we wish that they were. I'm not saying I have any reasons as to why it is that right now it's growing. I can only tell you that this is consistent over history. When the Black Death has occurred, anti-Semitic incidents went up. When societies face economic challenges in Europe, anti-Semitic incidents, shocking as it may seem, also went up. As our society finds itself toward the end of this pandemic, shocking as it may seem, anti-Semitic incidents are up. We also see anti-Semitic rhetoric in the form of anti-Zionist rhetoric. And I bring this to your attention because it's not simply in the left of society or the right of society or the white supremacists over here or this group over here. It's everywhere. We see it in the form of anti-Zionist statements that equate Israel as occupiers, Israel as a state that is torturing in some form or fashion the Palestinians, Israel this horrible, oppressive state. If you're on the ground, that's not necessarily what you see. And yet, that is the claim that many on the far left tend to make about Israel. Equally problematic, the far ultra-right will make other challenging claims, inspired perhaps by Henry Ford's Elders of Zion claims and other such like, that there's some sort of monetary conspiracy, economics that need to be brought forward, and it simply makes me wonder if it really was the case that Jews had all sorts of money. Wouldn't it be lovely? Instead, the truth is, as a rabbi serving in many communities, I've seen Jews on welfare, Jews relying on their Social Security check, Jews who need to go to bread lines and food banks for assistance. Because like everybody, the cycle of wealth is real. So whether you're on the right or the left of society, we're getting hammered. On top of it, we have silence in the mainstream press. How many of you have heard about the rise and specifically the anti-Semitic incidents in Texas this past week? I bet the answer is very few of you, unless you're paying attention to Times of Israel or the Jewish press. I did not see it widely reported in the media. And for me, that's a big problem. We are got and discuss politics so easily, which don't worry, I'm not discussing from the Bima, I promise you. But if I turn on CNN, it's so easy to find politics discussed. It's so easy to scream about election results. It's so easy to analyze things. But what I don't see is discussions about hate speech and how it is that we cannot just say that, yes, it exists, but B, we need to form a more positive community. We need to get to know our neighbors. We need to do things that are not just sitting there acknowledging that it exists, but actually engaging with it to stop it from happening. And to do that, we have to admit that it's occurring. And by the way, when I say we, I don't just mean like the media, I also mean me and you. For me, it's hard. I look and I see anti-Semitic incidents. I don't want to look at it. I don't want to acknowledge it. I want to stick my head in the sand. But I have to remind myself, I'm the granddaughter of Holocaust survivors. I'm in this country raising my kids for a reason. Because if it wasn't for the Holocaust, I A, may never have been born, or B, if I had been born, would have been living in Germany where my family was from for many centuries. So there is anti-Semitism. And in Kiddush Club beginning in December, we're going to explore it together. I'm planning on bringing theories of why it exists, looking at Deborah Lipstitz's most recent book, among other ideas regarding why is there growing anti-Semitism and what can we do about it. If you're curious, reach out. Let's talk about it. Maybe you have an idea for Kiddush Club and how we can be more successful in teaching it. Maybe there's a theory that you're familiar with that you yourself want to teach, as opposed to it always just coming from me. I fully admit and own I am not the owner, purveyor of all Jewish knowledge. Well, I happen to have a fair amount of it. But on this topic, perhaps, and I will admit, I haven't wanted to pay attention. I didn't want to admit it was there. It took Pittsburgh to happen for me to really say, I need to start paying a lot more attention. And I wish that I wasn't admitting that. May you not need a Pittsburgh moment. May the fact that it's growing inspire you to simply want to look more at it. And so I end not on an uplifting note, but simply a note that says, let's continue the journey of exploration together. As sorry as it is, as sad as it is, but necessary, it truly is.